Hello and welcome to Save Your Sanity. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. We're going to talk about cognitive empathy tonight. And if you're not familiar with cognitive empathy, this will be really eye opening for you. We kind of think empathy is empathy, but it isn't. There are several kinds of empathy. And where we can get really caught up is when a toxic person, a hijackal, a narcissist, an antisocial, actually demonstrates cognitive empathy, and we jump up and think, oh my goodness, this person is really interested in me. And there's a danger in there. And you may have already found that out. But I want to help tonight by going through a lot of things that have to do with the confusion and the manipulation that hijackals use cognitive empathy to create. And if this hasn't crossed your path before, I think you'll find it really interesting. And I'm glad that you're joining me tonight and enjoying the podcast. If you'd like to hear other episodes, you can go to saveyoursanitypodcast.com or go wherever you like to find your podcast because we're everywhere. And if you'd like to support this podcast, I really appreciate it. And so do the people who listen and make it a weekly affair. You can go to patreon.com/saveyoursanity. Patreon.com/saveyoursanity. So let's talk about this. It's so easy to get taken in by a person who has the intent to take you in. And these people that I call hijackals, people who hijack relationships for their own interests and purposes, and then proceed to relentlessly scavenge them for power, status, and control as long as you'll let them and beyond. So hijackals kind of take in everybody and you don't need a diagnosis. Hijackals have patterns, traits, cycles, behaviors that I talk about a lot. And now that we're well over 240 episodes here, I do talk about it a lot. And you can find a lot of information by simply doing a search on hijackals, and it will take you to my YouTube channel for relationship help. So youtube.com/for relationship help or to the podcast. So empathy, it's a big question. It's something that we all prize. We think it's a very positive thing. It's the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experience of another person. And it goes on, the feelings, thoughts of another person of either the past or present without having the feelings, thoughts, and experience fully communicated in an objectively explicit manner. So basically, what that means is because we're kind of attuned to one another and we have empathy, we get the gist of what you're feeling, what your visual cues are, the way the muscles are in your face, the color in your face, the expression in your eyebrows, your body language, the tone of your voice, the body posture that you're exhibiting, and then your words. And we think, oh, I know what that feeling is. Oh, yes, I understand. I've been in your shoes. And so it can be very positive. So generally, empathy is positive. However, when the only form of empathy that is truly demonstrated by a hijackal is cognitive energy, cognitive empathy, then you could get very confused by this because it masquerades as empathy itself, but it actually isn't. And when you meet a hijackal or when you were entranced by a hijackal, you wanted to believe that the real person is the person that you met who was so charming, so into you, so delighted, so wanting to do everything for you and in a beautiful and quick manner, give you everything. Basically, you didn't want to believe that that was love bombing. You wanted to believe that was the real person. And why not? It was wonderful. You thought you'd met your soulmate. Now, of course, you may have had a hijackal parent or all, and I talk about that a lot. But right now, I'm just talking about romantic relationships, interpersonal marriage, living in partnerships. So you thought you had nailed that person. You knew who they were. They were wonderful, your soulmate, as I said, and that they just really loved you. They showered things on you. They were interested in you. They showered you with attention. And sadly, no, that person is not the real person. That was the love bomber. That was the team that comes along to engage you and get you sold, close you on the deal. And then it's bitch and switch, bait and switch. I almost got a little foul there. So then it's bait and switch, and you don't get that empathetic person to live with, do you? You really thought they were. You hoped they were. But then every now and again, you get further confused because that love bomber pops up, especially if they feel a little threatened that you're going to leave them or they really, really want something. You know what I'm talking about. Then all of a sudden, they're just charming, delightful, and into you again. It's very opportunistic. It's very confusing. So we want to be aware of what these are so they can exhibit what you want to believe is emotional empathy, but it isn't. It's cognitive empathy. And so we need to know the differences between cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. So cognitive empathy is being able to take another person's perspective, imagining, and be very careful here, imagining what it's like in another person's shoes and attempting to understand someone's feelings. Understand someone's feelings. Use cognitive empathy, use the brain, engage in a thought process. Now, that's very different than emotional empathy, which is actually sharing an emotional experience and feeling distress in someone's response to pain and experiencing a willingness to help. You're being led by the heart there, and it's a bonding. But cognitive empathy is, okay, what am I learning here? What's up there? What's actually happening? And it's a wonderful thing to have cognitive and emotional empathy. But if cognitive empathy is what you're relying on, you can see that the wheels are turning. They are endeavoring to say, all right, I know what empathy is supposed to look like, so let me do some here and then see how that other person responds. And you're often so grateful that it finally happened that you get sucked right in, and you don't mean to. You are just starved for attention. You're starved for emotional intimacy. And so it seems very, very attractive. Are you relating to this? Do you see this happening in your relationships? Because it certainly can be. And with cognitive empathy, you're trying to tap into the idea of placing yourself in someone else's situation to gain a better understanding of their experience, which, coupled with emotional empathy, would be great. I really got you. I really get it. I know how you feel. I can stand there. I can feel what it's like, and I can want to help you. But if it's only cognitive empathy and we're gaining a better understanding of someone's experience, imagine the data that can be picked up by a hijackal in that situation. How could they use it to manipulate you? Well, they could create purposefully a love bombing kind of bonding moment. And then they could really be interested in you and what you're feeling. And they can kind of troll for your vulnerabilities. And you're thinking, "Oh, the light's finally on. It's shining on me. This is wonderful." But really what they're doing is saying, "Give me all your soft bits. Give me all the places where you feel unsure of yourself. Give me all the places where your fears are." And then later, they will use them against you. And that is the danger of cognitive empathy. Truly a danger. So when cognitive empathy is present, You meet people where they are, you understand why they're sad or disappointed, but you might not be able to get into their shoes and care. And it's the caring that comes from the emotional empathy. Do you see what a clear difference there is there? So very, very important. So when somebody finds it more easily accessible to themselves, more easily able to access emotional empathy, they'll be more moved to help with something. They will be more moved to do that. And yet, um, cognitive empathy, no, it's information gathering. It really has to be seen that way. So, hijackals really like to find pre groomed people. They like to find people who perhaps had a hijackal parent or have just come out of an abusive relationship or have not had many opportunities in life to shine. They like to find people who are less than confident. On the other hand, there are some, not so many of them, there are some who see a very strong person as a challenge. They want to see if they can ferret out the vulnerabilities and drag that person down by attacking their weaknesses. It's nasty, isn't it? Truly nasty. And when you really start to understand this, you can see more clearly when cognitive empathy is all that you're being offered. And that's an important thing to see. It is so important to see. Says hijackals like pre-groomed people. In fact, they prefer people who have too much empathy. And when you have too much empathy, then we call that emotional dysregulation. And when you're emotionally dysregulated, it can become overwhelming. And engaging in that much empathy just burns you out and leaves you like, I don't even know if I have any empathy to give. It's too painful to be there, right? Have you ever felt that? Like you just can't relate any longer. You just can't give anymore. So let's just take a couple of examples. And this is from the um, verywellmind.com, these two examples. And example of cognitive empathy is a loved one says, my grandmother just died and we were really close, and they start to cry. And the person using cognitive empathy says, I'm sorry, I know you're sad and that what you're going through is hard. Now, can you feel the lack of connectivity in that? I'm sorry. I know you're sad and that what you're going through is hard. Don't plan on doing anything about it. Don't plan on helping out. Don't plan on moving in your direction. But I do know that what you're going through is hard. Whereas emotional empathy in that same situation, the loved one says, my grandmother just died and we were really close, and then they cry. The person using emotional empathy will say, I'm so sorry to hear about your grandmother. I know you miss her, but I'm here for you and we'll get through this together. Haven't you been longing to hear emotional empathy from a hijackal? I know, I was raised by 2 hijackals. I married and divorced one, co-parented with one, and was pretty much a hijackal magnet till I figured it all out. You're longing to hear, "I'm here for you. I get you. I feel your pain. What can I do to help?" But what you get is, "I know you're sad and that what you're going through is hard." Big, big, big difference. So if you have too much empathy and you meet one of these people who's a little low on empathy, it's not that hijackals don't have empathy, it's that they don't have emotional empathy. So any empathy that they have is going to come from cognitive. What am I supposed to feel? What am I supposed to do in this circumstance? I've heard other people do it well. Let me mimic what that is, and I'll do that too. And that's how they get confusing and manipulative. But if you've you become an overgiver and you have too much empathy, then you are likely doing what I call dancing for two. You're trying to figure out your life and what you want and everything, and then you're trying to figure out what the other person wants and all of that, and then you're going to try and do it for them so that you can get what you want. So you're dancing for two. It's absolutely exhausting. And what it does is it burns you out. But further, when you're burned out, it makes you more susceptible to their demands because you're just too exhausted to care or fight or stand up for yourself. It's just like, oh, no, I don't have another, I don't have another thing to give. I'm exhausted. So this inability to have emotional empathy on the part of the hijackal leads to troubled and often toxic relationships, and that's where you'll find them because the toxic person does not engage with your feelings, and they have very limited familiarity with their own feelings, which is why they'll go from 0 to 90 in rage. It's a very basic emotion. I often say that if you really provoke a hijackal, what you'll get is a 3 to 7-year-old whose mother won't buy them candy at the checkout at the grocery store, and they're on the floor throwing a fit, demanding and blaming, and "I don't like you," and "You never do anything for me," and all of that. They become an emotional child because they don't have a range of feelings that they have access to. That would be a vulnerability. They're not having any of that. So when they're not familiar with their own feelings and they're not interested in your feelings, that leads to a relationship imbalance. And if you have too much empathy and they don't have enough, then we've got a bigger problem, right? So cognitive empathy, it's not like emotional empathy. It's not like compassionate empathy. It's not like affective and empathy. It's darker. And that's why I wanted to share this with you. I wanted to do this episode with you. And by the way, if you are feeling like that just sounds exactly like what you're going through and you want to talk to me, I do offer a new client opportunity, an hour with me for only $97. Go to beaclient.com, beaclient.com, because you may just be in that place where you're going, oh, this is me. I am exhausted. I keep waiting for those moments when I feel that they feel something for me. And then when I get them, I'm so starved that I eat their few breadcrumbs that they leave me as though it's a feast. And that's not good. That is really not good. So go to beaclient.com if you need to talk with me about that and figure a few things out. So very important. So what I was saying was cognitive empathy without these other forms of empathy, it's quite dark all on its own because it's manipulative. It's used, the hijackals use it to have the ability to jump into your head, see how you see things, get a glimmer of your perspective on life, see what's important to you so they can withhold it, see what you want so they cannot give it to you, see what makes you upset so they can push that button when they want to. So using cognitive empathy is using the brain more than the heart, if you like, the emotions to connect with another person. So you can see how that could be them creating a laundry list of ways to have power over you. Now, of course, that's not every situation, not all the time, but I want to give you some insights into what might be, what could be happening. Because if it's happening to you, you really want these insights. So it's using that cognitive empathy to get into your head and get you to tell them all your secrets, get them to tell you your fears. They want you to tell them everything because they want you to feel so close to them, so seen and heard. And remember, you've been starving, so this little bit often seems like a lot, and it isn't. So they gather all this information and then they use it against you later on, but also they use it to benefit themselves. They will take that information. Now, how could I use that? How could I use that to get what I want? How could I use that to confuse? How could I use that to make someone feel guilty? How could I use that to have power over them? It's very sad. So, using cognitive empathy, which hijackals do, is manipulative, it's confusing, and it's very much done on purpose in order to establish power and control over you. And it's important to see that because hijackals use cognitive empathy to get what they want. It's just another pathway to getting what they want, just like all the other pathways are. They want what they want and they want it yesterday, and you are absolutely wrong if you're not giving it to them. Now, I know you might say, well, doesn't happen every day. No, it doesn't. But if there is a recurring pattern of this, it's important to see it. It's very important to recognize these patterns and not say, well, it happens occasionally. Ah, it happens occasionally when? What are the conditions that it occasionally happens in? And then you will begin to see, I didn't realize this was being used so manipulatively. So they go from love bombing you to devaluing you, to having you be the best thing since sliced bread, to being the scum of the earth in a blink of an eye, because they are manipulative and they have false fronts. And one false front they use is cognitive empathy. It's very useful to them. It makes them seem as though they really are taking other people's feelings into consideration. So it's useful. And if you don't know what that difference is sounding like, as I was telling you, you can go back and listen to those examples of the difference between cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. And if you're getting cognitive empathy responses, I think you'll probably recognize that in this episode and say, hey, I am not getting what I need. I have something masquerading as emotional empathy, which really isn't. So I think they're connecting and relating to me, but what they're really doing is information gathering and endeavoring to get into my head and be able to use it against me. So it's very important. This cognitive empathy masquerades as interest and attention and even kindness because they are deigning to speak to you and they are demonstrating interest. Now, I don't mean to say all hijackals are awful all the time. Otherwise, you wouldn't stay with them. But the fluctuation in their states when they need something, when they want something, when they're comfortable, when they're not comfortable, keeps you walking on eggshells. And I've said so many times, that's really a terrible way to get your exercise. It's really not good. The narcissist, the hijackal, wants to see what you have so they can take it. I'll say that again. The narcissistic hijackal wants to see what you have so they can take it. They want to get as much as they can. So there's a high cost to experiencing their cognitive empathy. You may long for it because it's the empathy that you'll get from them, but there's often a high cost, and it's important to know what it is. And that's why cognitive empathy can confuse you, because in the hands of a hijackal, it is totally manipulative. So I hope this has opened your eyes to a few things or given a definition or a name to something you're experiencing. Because as I said, in the hands of a hijackal, cognitive empathy is a bit dark. It's manipulative. It's confusing. It's betrayal in a sense because they draw you closer and then use that to push you away. So I hope it's been helpful. I hope you'll think about it. Be sure to contact me if I can help you. Remember, go to beaclient.com, or if you'd like to join in my membership program, Emerging Empowered Community, come on over. Just go to joinintoday.com. Join in today and become a member and get access to me in our group Ask Me Anything calls twice a month. That's a great place to join in, receive support from other people and myself, share your stories, know you're not alone, and it's safely off social media. It's on my web system. So you can't be found on social media when you're part of the emerging empowered community. And I'd love to see you there. Go to joinintoday.com. Until we speak again, take very good care of yourself because you're precious and you matter. Talk soon. Good evening. I'm happy to see you here, and you've had lots of things to say. So that's great. Thanks for the thumbs up, Allie. Hi, Simply Savvy. Hello. It's a huge pivotal point when you realize the person you loved doesn't exist. Isn't that so? That you really thought that this person that you had really delighted in is not real. They don't really exist. Yes, it is a big point. Hi, Katerina. Yeah, she says, I like the phrase treating fantasies of deficit self estimation of narcissists. Wow, that's a mouthful. Simply Savvy says, so true. They're learning to mimic, give what you want in a cold, calculated way. Its purpose is manipulation, not care. Yes, and that's a lesson often learned the hard way, isn't it? As you say, it's almost, if not outright, diabolical. Well, it certainly takes the rug out from under your feet when you realize it, because you thought there was some solid ground to stand on there, and there really isn't. That that empathy. Yes, they have empathy. People like to say, well, hijackals, narcissists, etc., don't have empathy, but they do master cognitive empathy. They just don't have the kind that makes them able to be healthy and to engage in healthy relationships. Simply Savvy says they'll use sensitive information against innocent parties just to hurt or control you or as a perceived threat. Oh, yes, they love to do that, because they gather that information when they have expressed this cognitive empathy, when you're having a good moment, when you feel that the person you fell in love with has returned. They gather all that information and they meet it out when they want to. Have you ever had one of those moments where you feel really close to a hijackal, and you say something, and then you're out with friends, and then they say what you told them in confidence and they laugh? They use it for a laugh line. That's the kind of thing that they do. Oh, Simply Savvy said, like it's a burglar casing the joint. That's exactly what it's like. ADG says, I want to vomit every time I'm near my husband. I don't know who that person is anymore. It's like he has different personalities to manipulate me. Well, he may have different personalities, but usually that's not about manipulation. If somebody has dissociative identity disorder, which I'm sure you weren't speaking about, I'm just being silly, but they respond differently in different circumstances. It's one of the ways they like to keep you on your toes. You never know who you're going to get when a hijackal comes home. You don't know what they're going to say, what their perception is going to be, and they're not what they're going to ask for, what they're going to be angry about. It's really difficult. And so I agree with you. It is like they have different personalities that they use to manipulate you in different ways. They sort of come closer, go away manipulation. They're really good at that one. Allie Pats is very helpful. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm glad it was helpful. Now, as I say each evening when we do this, it takes about 20 seconds from when you hit send, whatever you put in the chat, when you hit send until I see it. So what I do is I stay until I have waited 30 seconds and there's nothing else in the chat. So I'm giving you that heads up right now so that you can use that information. If you have a question about any aspect of toxic relationships, I'm happy to entertain it. If you want to share something of your life, please do. I don't put them up on the screen because I want to keep you all safe. And even if you very carefully constructed a wonderfully different name on Facebook or YouTube that has nothing to do with who you really are, I just want to keep you safe. So I just read the comments. But if you have a comment or a question, now would be the time to put it in there. Because when we're dealing with empathy, we long to be seen, we long to be known and heard and acknowledged and appreciated and accepted. We just long for that. And so when somebody turns their empathy light on and shines it on us, we just blossom. And unfortunately, we have to realize that the light that comes from that is not going to be helpful. It is not going to help us to grow. It is not going to help us to blossom. It is going to be used in order to kill our roots. We have to be careful with that. Thanks for the heart, Simply Savvy. And Nicole says they have to do anything to make you look stupid and or triangulate you with others. Mind games, crazy making crap. Well, that's true. Last week I did the show on the manipulations of triangulation. That's really important. Now, there's over 240 episodes, so if you want to do a search on them quickly, go to saveyourSanityPodcast.com and you'll see that there's a little magnifying glass to do a search, find things that might interest you. But you're absolutely right. They like to do things that make you feel inadequate or make you look stupid, as you say. And they love to triangulate through other people because then there's nobody to um, verify if what they say is true, because you're not there to say, no, that's not true. And such an important thing to recognize. It's hard to recognize these things. It's hard to say, I chose this person or I let them choose me and I'm still with them. And I don't want to see them as an abuser. I don't want to see them in this light of darkness. But we do have to, because they are affecting your life. They're affecting your life every day you're with them. They're changing your perspective of who you are. They're changing their perspective of your desire and to be deserving of love and respect and kindness and honesty and trust. Those things are hard to come by in a relationship with a hijackal. You know that. And when you start to realize that even their empathy is something that's useful to them to get what they want, it becomes very important to see that. Simply Savvy says, I'm aware of the psychological makings of hijackals. What are your thoughts on spiritual, extra dimensional aspects, micro, macro attempts by hijackals to squash love, light, and potential in the world? I think we give them too much credit maybe for being that effective, but that's surely what it feels like. Um, I don't I don't think that they're out to have a big conspiracy about squashing love and light and potential in the world. They're way too self-centered to care about the world. They just simply want what they want, and they want it yesterday, and they want it from you, and they want it served up the way they want it. And every time you serve it up the way they want it, they'll tell you they want it differently. So they're too self-centered to be concerned about the world. But what they do want is loyalty, fealty, unwavering adoration and validation from someone else. So they do care if they can get into positions where a whole lot of people will adore them or validate them. So you may be thinking of that. And when it's all about them.com, it's certainly not going to be about the world or bettering the lives of other humans, because it's all about bettering their own life, lining their own pockets, receiving the validation that they are continuously missing in life. So I would suggest that that's what my response would be to the micro and macro attempts by them. But from a spiritual extra dimensional perspective, I think everyone comes into this world, um, aside from, there are people who have some different um, brain scans, and they don't have the capacity for good intentions. They are a little bit warped in their way that they look at the world. They come usually from home situations, not the ones who have the brain scan issues, but the ones who actually have learned to be this way. So that's really important. But I think, everybody deserves to be loved, and some people deserve to be loved from a great distance. So I will say that about that. And I don't use the word Satan, Nicole, um, so I won't respond to that. Um, I think it's important for us to be just focused on the actual person rather than on them as some kind of force in the world. There are very few people who fall into what's called psychologically and clinically called the Dark Triad. People with the Dark Triad, I think we can probably ascribe the word evil to them because that's the way their brains work. That's the way the brains are actually wired. Ali says, "Oh, no worries, Nicole. You didn't know." Um, Nicole was apologizing for bringing up the word Satan. Ali said, "How can you stand up to one without them throwing a hissy fit?" Oh, that's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? Um, don't stand up to them, stand up for you. So use my techniques. My techniques in my book, Kaizen for Couples, this book. It's available in print, obviously, and as a download on Amazon. And in there, I have 2 chapters to teach you the personal weather report. That's my technique for standing up for yourself, not up to somebody else. So just changing that in your mind, Allie, can make a difference. Like, I am going to empower myself to stand up for myself. I'm not going to stand up to the bully. I'm not going to stand up to them and make them wrong. I am going to do it from my own personal power coming from who I am, and I'll stand up for myself. That's an important piece. So what that looks like is they say something and you say, "That's not the way I see it. Actually, that's not the way I remember it. No, I don't feel that way. But if you'd like to inquire how I feel, I'll tell you." And you start inching forward. That's what I teach my people over at my Emerging Empowered community, that these are the important things to do. And if you want to join over there, go to joinintoday.com. So it's worthwhile learning to speak from standing up for yourself. Um, n- there's never a percentage, by the way. I've said this so many times, but I'll say it tonight. Don't poke a hijackal. Don't tell them you think they're a narcissist. Don't tell them you think they're terrible. All of that kind of thing. It only enrages them. Remember, their emotional repertoire is really not available to them, so they rage or sulk, which is them raging without speaking. So there's no point ever poking them. Don't do that. So I hope that's helpful to you, Ali. Sugar Snap, I haven't seen you before. Welcome. They break you down so much you don't know realize it's happening, and then you wake up and bam, you're shaking because you realize what's just happened. Yes, they're sneaky that way, aren't they? They're underhanded and undermining, and that's exactly what they'll do. Um, and then you find yourself on the wrong end of the stick, right? Which is why you need to be able to stand up for yourself and just say, you know, I am not going to be disrespected. I feel disrespected right now. I feel as though I am not being heard. Those are personal weather reports. Basically, and there are several videos I've done on YouTube on personal weather reports. So just go to my YouTube channel if you're not already there, and youtube.com/for FOR relationship help, and put in the personal weather report, and you will find videos on there. But basically, to give a personal weather report means that you know that you deserve to take up space and draw breath on this earth, fully inhabit your space, and therefore you know that you have the right to say what you think, feel, need, want, prefer, and remember, as long as you do not mention another human by name or pronoun. That's the important bit. You only speak about yourself. You're giving a weather report about what's going on within you, not anything about them. And when you do that, that can really help you, because you then can say, you know, I'm very confused right now. What would be helpful for me to know is this. And so you can change, alter your communication by being in touch in that way. And you're welcome, Allie. So that's what you want to do. Is once you start realizing this, you want to be emerging empowered. You want to find yourself again. You want to reclaim your personal power and rebuild your life. You don't have to leave to do that. It doesn't have to be right away, but you want to get yourself back so that you can make good decisions. And then if you're going to leave, you have to make that decision. And then you have to create an exit strategy, then execute the strategy, and then recover after all that. It's a big, big deal. And I understand that. That's what I walk with my clients through. Nicole says, I try to pretend he is a science experiment and I have to make notes like he's a specimen. Well said. Good for you for making notes, because yes, of course, Russ's phrase, observe, don't absorb. It's a really good one. I say, watch it or you'll catch it. You want to be thinking about that too. Just be an observer. Don't catch it. Don't take it on. Don't become like them. Because there is that tendency that finally, when they throw the ball at you so many times, you want to throw the ball back harder. And then you become like them, and you're not proud of that. I know you're not proud of that. Um, Sugar Snap says, thank you. Funnily, I said to him, I feel very confused. His response was, I don't care. The relationship's over. Well, good. Thank you very much. That worked really well. I hope that's the response that could make you happy. Nicole said, that's right. Love him. I don't know who Russ is, but um, yeah, it's important for us to take back our power. And it's not power over people. It's our personal power, our rights in life, the rights that come with responsibilities, so that we can have a really good understanding of keeping things in balance, the balance of compassion for ourselves, in balance with compassion for others. And hijackals want you to go way over and have compassion for them and no compassion for yourself. A Facebook user asks, why would someone you are dating ignore you when they see you at pickleball? Well, maybe they don't have their glasses on. We could give them the benefit of the doubt. But people who you date who are not happy to see you, observe that and recognize that it's a no-go. That's just a no-go. If you're not happy to see me, particularly out of a pack of other people, and we're dating, just take that as a red flag, okay? Because they're obviously grooming somebody else at pickleball. Not that that particular person is obviously doing that, but of the many things that hijackals could do, why they would ignore you at pickleball is they're grooming somebody else. They've been at pickleball before and they have people pre-groomed. They don't want them to know that they're dating you. They want to have power over you to see if you will come rushing up to them, and therefore they can sort of make you um, come their way instead of going to you to see if they can exercise some power. It's nasty. It's nasty. Oh, yeah. Okay. His name is Ross, not Russ. Yes. Um, yes, I know that. He's a colleague of mine. um, all right. Facebook user says, "Why are they always jealous of other men, even though the other men could be married?" Well, there's nothing more fearful in the whole world, and you may have difficulty believing this. There's nothing more fearful than a hijackal, narcissist, sociopath, psychopath when you scratch their surface. They're afraid of not being number one. They're afraid of shame. They're afraid of not being good enough. All of that is covered in the behavior that they have. So when they think that you are talking to somebody else, that means you're not talking to them. And they have to be the center of attention. So that's why they're very, very jealous humans mostly. And they don't really want you, but they don't want anyone else to have you either. So it's important to recognize as a red flag that if they're always jealous, don't take that as a compliment. It means they're lacking in trust for you. Yes, a guy can say to you, "Oh, yeah, don't you like that guy?" Or "Don't look too long at him, it makes me jealous." They can say that and be in a very loving relationship because they treat you really, really well. But a hijackal will be jealous, and they'll treat you really badly, but they'll still be jealous because they don't really want you, but they don't want anyone else to have you. So, very important things that we've discussed tonight. I hope this has been helpful to you. I'm here most Monday nights, haven't missed one, but I always say most just in case I miss one. Make sure that you subscribe if you're on YouTube, and if you're on Facebook, like the page so that you will see the notifications um, when whatever topic I'm going to be doing. Also, you get notifications if you're on my YouTube channel when I do Facebook Lives, as I did this afternoon. I did a wonderful Facebook Live with Dr. Gary Salyer, and we talked about feeling safe to date after a toxic relationship. So you might want to find that on the YouTube channel. Yes. Oh, yes. Um, so you always hit the nail right on the head. If you're speaking to me, thank you. You could be responding to somebody else I don't know. But, I endeavor to bring as many topics to light here as I possibly can so that you can see the many, many facets of this behavior and make good decisions for yourself. Thank you. Simply Savvy says, lovely presentation as usual. Thank you so much. And you know what I'm going to say now. Be very, very good to yourself because you're precious and you matter. And I look forward to talking with you really soon. Good night.